I came across this principle of memory, which is recall of an item of information increases the likelihood of subsequent recall. And how it was explained, it's like for each recall of an item of information, the brain cell connections or the brain pathway is being created. And so each time you recall that same item of information, it travels down the same pathway in the brain. Now, we've got an unlimited number of pathways, but it's creating the neuronal pathway for that item of information makes it more likely to be subsequently recalled. In other words, we remember what we have remembered. And the act of recall actually creates the brain cell connections, the brain cells that fire together, wire together. So retelling really serves as a memory aid and also as a test for how well you remembered and understood the information.
This episode, we're speaking with the world's best brain power coach and speed reading expert, Nina Sunday, and I'm going to ask about speed reading and how it works. Welcome, Nina Sunday. I'm curious, Nina, what's the first question people ask when they first meet you and find out you are an expert in speed reading?
Thank you, Paul. It's great to be here. Well, that's an easy one, Paul. When they find out that I'm Australia's expert in speed reading, they'll say, "Oh, how fast do you read?" And the answer really, it's not so much how fast do I read, it's what result I can trigger in other people with the techniques that I show them. But certainly it's a measure of proof if I can tell them that I can read anywhere between 1,000 and 2,000 words per minute and understand what I'm reading. And when I first learnt the skill, I graduated the course with reading at 2,000 words per minute with about 90% comprehension as measured in a test. So, but I also should point out that my reading rate does depend on my purpose for reading, the format, whether it's a business report prior to a meeting or whether it's escapism, I'm reading a novel for fun, am I reading poetry or a restaurant menu? So why am I reading it? Am I just wanting to get through the information? But generally, I can comfortably read between 1,000 and 2,000 words per minute, and poetry isn't meant to be sped read; it's meant to be read aloud. So, therefore, I can always read slowly if I want to. So, if I'm drooling over a menu, I don't speed read that. Unless sometimes you go to those restaurants that have like a page of seafood and a page of duck and a page of chicken and a page of lamb and a page of yeah, that's when you need to speed read a menu. But there are what we call phenomenal readers who can read as fast as they can turn pages. I'm not one of those, but I have actually worked with or been present in a room where someone was a phenomenal reader, as we call them.
I'm wondering, what is an average reading rate?
Well, the average reading rate we measure in words per minute, and that average reading rate is about 250 words per minute. It's between 200 and 300 words per minute. And that's a pretty typical rate. Now, what I do find is that sometimes when I've run classes and we measure people's rates, sometimes a lawyer has the slowest rate in the class, like 120 words per minute, or an engineer.
So, Nina, how do you measure reading rate?
Well, in our classes, we invite people to bring, if it's a one-day face-to-face program, we invite people to bring 3 medium degree of difficulty books, so text only. So if I reach over and show you, this is a book that has text only, and we might say bring a mix of books, maybe fiction and non-fiction, and not a lot of graphs, charts, diagrams, only because we want to be able to easily count up the number of words on a typical full page. And then as we're doing the exercises, we might be reading 9 pages. Well, we only have to go, 320 words per page times 9, that's, 2,700, 3,000 words. So it becomes easy to quickly calculate your reading rate. So it's words per minute. And so what we'll do is we must do it at least 6 or 7 times in a one-day workshop where we'll get them to read, do an exercise or a fast input eye exercise, and then do what we call a reality check to read for understanding for 3 minutes. And because we're taking them up into high rates and then saying, okay, now where's your comfortable rate? Taking you up to the next high rate, where's your comfortable rate? And so by actually overstretching, coming back to your next comfortable rate, you never go back to the original slow rate. So it's a step-by-step process, and it just does seem to work.
And in your workshops, Nina, how fast can you improve people's reading rate?
Very good question. And we have been keeping the statistics of all the people attending our courses over the last 10 years or so. And the statistics are, and I'll do it in round figures, I would say 40% of people end up tripling their beginning speed with the same or better understanding. 30% would increase by 4 times their beginning speed with the same or better understanding. Then you've got the rest, 10% reading between 5 and 10 times their beginning speed. And of course, if you started at 200 words per minute and read 5 times faster than that, that's 1,000 words per minute. So that's not super fast. That is speed reading, but it's not super fast in the speed reading world. And of course, everybody at least doubles. So if 20% of people just double, well, while that is still in the lower range, it still is an acceptable outcome for having spent a day doing eye input exercises designed to boost your reading rate and your understanding and comprehension.
How exactly does a speed reader read?
Speed readers read by relaxing the eye focus and using a pacer to guide the eyes. And I do actually have a free webinar, both a live webinar coming up soon, that if you go to the brainpowertraining.com.au/go, you will see a link to the page that is where you can register for that webinar. Or if there isn't one immediately coming up soon, we always have the recording of the most recent one available for people to see. And in that webinar, you bring along some sort of reading material, whether it be a book or a report or a magazine, and we'll get you to read for a minute. Then we'll get you to read using a technique for a minute and improve your compare your reading rate. Then we'll do a 3-minute eye exercise designed to boost reading rate, and then we will read again for another minute. And generally what happens is a majority of people double their reading rate. In fact, I had 30 minutes at a real estate convention some decades ago when I was first starting out, and it was a practical session. It was 1,000 people in the auditorium. They were all real estate agents who did like to read books on selling and success. And as I say, it wasn't just talking about speed reading like I am tonight. It was actually getting them to read, and I was timing them. And when at the end I said, and whose rate has increased and whose rate has doubled, well, everybody's rate went up for having increased, and a significant number had doubled their rate. And the president of the Real Estate Institute, who was present in the room, told the organisers later that of all the presentations at that convention that day, he thought that mine had the most value for him. So, it really works like a charm.
So, Nina, what are the roadblocks to people reading faster?
Yeah, that is the key question. And what it is, it's how the eyes look at the page, how the average reader's eyes look at the page. And we can turn to optometrists here, and we can understand that they use tools like eye movement cameras to observe the movement of the eyes as they move across and down the page. So it doesn't really depend so much on the direction, but what it is, or the average reader, their eyes they don't just move smoothly across the line, they tend to regress every now and again. In fact, probably once or twice every line, because they're regressing 50 or 60 times per page when there's only 25 or 30 lines to a page. So eye movement cameras have measured the number of regressions where the eye flits back and reread parts of a word. Now, the average reader is not aware that they're doing it because they've become so used to it anyway, and it's almost subliminal. But the cameras pick it up, they can slow it down, you can see the eye regressing. So we have a technique that's designed to help the eyes move across the line more smoothly and fluently. So regression is probably one of the biggest roadblocks. There is another one that is kind of reminiscent from when we first learned to read. You might remember that a lot of us, when we were first learning to read, the teacher said, please read the book aloud. Dick and Dora ran. The boy kicked the ball. So that was the early days of reading. And so that kind of subconsciously cemented in our heads that maybe we need to hear the words and say the words, or hear the words in our head as we're reading in order to understand them. And that's not absolutely true. I mean, it's become habitual to experience what we call sub-vocalization, hearing the words in your head as you're reading them, but it's not necessary for understanding. I mean, I remember when I was learning French at high school, and we had a French night where we had to speak only French for the evening, and this was last, grade 12, final year of high school. And I do remember I had enough facility with the language that by the end of the evening, I wasn't hearing the French, then translating it into English, and then working out what my answer would be in French and then saying it in French. I would hear it and understand it in French immediately and then be able to speak back in French. Yes, it was only basic, but I bypassed the sub-vocalization in speaking a foreign language, and the reader can do that as well. We can have direct eye-to-eye transfer of the information without having to say the words. But imagine if you're saying every word slowly, one word at a time, you can only read at speaking speed. And in fact, the speed reader can read as fast as they can see words, not just as fast as they can say words. So automatically your reading rate goes up if you can get over that threshold. But it's all about techniques that we give you. And I will be, in the show notes will be a link to, I sometimes run a free live webinar where I give you a taste of speed reading or of the techniques, where we actually measure your reading rate.
How do you measure comprehension and memory after reading?
Well, that's easy. I find that no two people read the same book in the same way to get the same information that's meaningful to them. Everybody brings their context and their backstory, their experience with the either the story or the information. So the best, and really comprehension tests are really just multiple choice tests of fact. And often you want the key concept. And so what you really want to retrieve or recall is the key concepts that have meaning for you. So I find a 30-second retelling of what you just read not only is a good test of your memory, because if you're fluent and you could go on for another minute, well, you know you've actually had good memory of it, or the opposite. If you peter out after 15 seconds and don't have anything else to say, it's like, well, maybe your comprehension of that wasn't so good. But I find that when you do a 30-second or a 1-minute retelling from memory of what you've just read, your memory and ability to recall does get better with practice. Now, one of the experts who I read in the early days, it was Professor Alan Badley's The Psychology of Memory. I took it on a holiday to Fiji, and that was my light reading, but I was fascinated. And about 2/3 of the way through the book, I came across this principle of memory, which is recall of an item of information increases the likelihood of subsequent recall. And how it was explained, it's like for each recall of an item of information, the brain cell connections or the brain pathway is being created. And so each time you recall that same item of information, it travels down the same pathway in the brain. Now, we've got an unlimited number of pathways, but it's about, and of course, our understanding of the brain has sort of travelled in leaps and bounds since I read that book. But essentially, creating the neuronal pathway for that item of information makes it more likely to be subsequently recalled. In other words, we remember what we have remembered. So it makes sense to me if students include in their study plan, their study method, to actually close the chapter that they've been reading and just look, they can do it to themselves, or if there's a pet in the house, they could tell the dog. Just do a 30-second or a 1-minute summary from memory of what you've just read. And the active recall actually creates the brain cell connections, the brain cells that fire together, wire together. So retelling really serves as a memory aid and also as a test for how well you remembered and understood the information. And also, be aware it's one thing to comprehend, it's another to be able to retrieve it. So they're actually two separate skills. They're on the two sides of the same coin.
The question I've always wondered, Nina, is can you still enjoy a novel if you speed read it?
Well, just as I was mentioning earlier about there's different types of novels, and some novels are meant to be enjoyed because of the language and the how the author has crafted the sentence. And then there are other novels that are straight plot. Well, I can remember this one instance when I was living in Sydney, and we have ferries on the harbour, and I caught the ferry from a suburb called Greenwich that was going to near the Opera House called Circular Quay. And it was a thin little book. It was Old Marley and the Boy by Sherman. And it was a lovely story about an old man taking a boy on a little bit of a trek in a wilderness area where there were bears. I believe it was set in India or somewhere over that part of Asia. And the man got his foot caught in a bear trap. And, of course, that's dangerous because if you're caught in a trap and a bear comes, you can't run away. You can't save yourself. So anyway, I won't spoil it by telling you how it all transpired. But there was a wonderful denouement ending to the story, and I remember I was speed reading it. I started it at one ferry station, and as we were pulling in to the destination, I remember gasping out loud with the surprise and joy of the resolution of the story. And look, I don't think I've read it again, but to this day, that book stays so vivid in my memory as being a really positive experience. So there are times when the things that we read, if we speed read them, they just go in at a deeper level. We just have that visceral enjoyment of it, and it's not that surface level word for word. So that's something that you'll discover as a speed reader. If you get up to 1,000 words per minute speed reading or more, you'll discover that there's a whole world of response to literature and the different types of literature that happens when you go beyond just an average reading rate, one word at a time. I do recall when I first learned to speed read, I was at university and one of my subjects was history. And we used to have to read a book, meet once a week and discuss it, a small group of students. And, well, it was perfect for me because I was a speed reader and I could read it twice if I wanted to. And, of course, my ability to discuss it became more finely tuned. I got my first high distinction from a reading course at university. And before that, I was just a pass credit student. But I could either read more in the same amount of time or just read a few things in less time. Either way, it freed me up to be able to do part-time work as a speed reading trainer or enable me to thoroughly read broadly in order to answer an assignment and also to be able to discuss it.
Well, our time is nearly coming to a close, Nina. I just want to ask you, do companies get you into the workplace to teach speed reading face-to-face?
Well, thanks for asking, Paul. And yes, that's the majority of my bookings are Australia and New Zealand, where either myself or one of my local trainers in that city will go to the workplace and we can deliver it as a one-day workshop and people will increase their reading rate. I do have a live online course called Speed Reading Academy, and that's just 2.5 hours, but normally you spread it over a couple of sessions. And I've had people get their rates up to exceeding 1,000 words per minute in that. And I can also do live online virtual courses as well. That's usually 2.5 hour sessions, either on separate days or one session in the morning and another session in the afternoon. And when I've done these live online, if it's not just to a company but to a public group, which we do from time to time, I find that I'm able to schedule it at a time that will suit both Australia, New Zealand, USA, and even Europe. So that way, everybody can learn the skill together as a live online virtual program. So if you go to brainpowertraining.com.au/go, you'll see more information about those workshops and you'll see links to register to the live online or the free webinar that gives you a taste of the techniques. Or if we haven't got a live one coming up soon, there will be a replay available of the most recent one. So yes, it can be taught remotely online. Well, thanks, Paul. It's been a pleasure to share my experiences with speed reading with my listeners. All the best.
Nina Sunday, CEO of Brainpower Training, is on a mission to help leaders transform culture. To find out more about speed reading training face-to-face in your workplace or virtual or the pre-recorded course at Speed Reading Academy, head to brainpowertraining.com.au/go. Nina Sunday facilitates workshops in the workplace anywhere across Australia Pacific. For a list of Nina's workshop topics, not only speed reading but also communication, productivity, customer service or teamwork, go to brainpowertraining.com.au/signature programs to request a tailored proposal.